Okay, introduction workshop for our yoga course. My name is Ron. I'm originally from the Netherlands, but I've been in Korea for the past almost 25 years. And I gave up my Dutch nationality and took Korean nationality. I can't even go back to my own country. Yoga. I guess you want to hear something about yoga. Let's start with the word yoga. The meaning of the word yoga. Very interesting is that many languages are somehow connected. And the Indian language or the Sanskrit language has many connections to other languages around the world. Especially the European area, the languages that we find there, we call Indo-European languages for a reason. The word yoga is a very interesting word. And if you understand the meaning of that word, you understand the essence of yoga. Now, first of all, often when you hear Indian people pronounce the word yoga, they don't say yoga. Is that correct? Yeah. They say yo. Yo. Sound familiar? English? The Dutch word you don't pronounce the J in the English way, juk. You say yuk, like yoke, yuk, yoke. It comes from the stem word huge, but that makes it a little bit distracting, so let's just, but you can see the link here. You have a link here, and you have a link here. Interesting, eh? What does it mean? You know what a yoke is? Many people don't know because it's something that we don't use much anymore. But a good example of a yoke is what is used in agriculture. Before there were tractors, to pull the plow, to pull a cart. Let me tell you that the word yoke or yoga implies control. Control of what? Control of energy. Which is technically what you do when you put a yoke on a horse or an ox and connect that with a plow or a cart to make that big mass of energy do the hard work for you. Technically, what you're doing is harnessing that big ball of energy and canalize it to make it work for you. Can you see that? Try to imagine. Ancient human beings, they were hunter-gatherers at first. But as they evolved, clever human beings among them thought it would be a good idea to stay in one place and to try to create an environment in which they could sustain themselves, reducing danger, reducing instability, increasing also the likelihood that there is food available by starting to grow food. Now, a human being is only a small ball of energy. We are only 60, 70, 80 kilo of mass. So, settling down, working the field every day, having to plow with the hand, by hand, that is backbreaking, exhausting. Harvesting, bringing the harvest home on the shoulders, very hard work. And while those people were working hard, toiling in the field, in the distance, they see these huge animals, 1,000 kilo of muscle mass. And while you're working so hard, that animal there is doing nothing. Or so it seems. Just eating some grass, some leaves, just fooling around, lying down, doing nothing. A clever person at some point thought, what if I could use that big mass of muscle, of energy, to do the hard work for me? And so they invented the yoke. They had to first, of course, befriend those animals in order to get them to become cooperative. So they had to win their trust, but then they had to also find a way to make that big mass of energy work for them. And that is where the yoke comes in. Some clever ancient human being figured out a way to connect the animal through a yoke around the neck, which is connected with leads, with ropes, to whatever you wanted to do, a cart to bring the harvest home, or a plow to do the hard work of plowing the field. So that is where the word yoga comes from, which implies that yoga is designed to control energy. Now, why would you need that? Because energy is inherently unstable. How old is yoga? Any idea? What is yoga? What is yoga? Any idea? People will say, generally people will say, it's exercise, stretching. Or they will say, it's meditation. Is that correct? Only partially. What yoga really is, to understand what yoga really is, we need to know how old yoga is, where it comes from. How old is yoga? You ever read a book about yoga and the introduction said, yoga is so old, so many years old? No? How about if I say...
It's like it goes back to many centuries.
Yeah. They say 5,000 years.
Yeah.
But if you read a Korean history book, how old is Korean history? 5,000 years. Strange. Where does that number come from, 5,000 years? Our written history goes back 5,000 years. It's when we started recording things. But when you read those books or you talk with historians who say Korean culture is 5,000 years old, for me that begs the question, So there were no Koreans 6,000 years ago, 7,000 years ago, 8,000 years ago. So there was no yoga 5,000 years and before. No, the explanation for that number is simply that written history doesn't go back further than 5,000 years. But how old is yoga really? To understand how old yoga really is, we cannot pinpoint a number. But yoga is not an exercise. That's only part of yoga with a very specific purpose. It's not meditation, like exercise. That's part of yoga with a very special purpose. Yoga is, in essence, the science of life. Yoga is as old as mankind becoming conscious. How old is that? Tens of thousands of years old, maybe a couple of 100,000 years old. But yoga started when people started asking questions. When people developed the need to know, to understand. So when humankind started to develop consciousness, they looked at the sky in the daytime and they said, what is this big ball of fire up there? And at night they said, what is all these twinkling lights up there and that white ball that keeps changing all the time? People wanted to know what their environment was like. So it started with simple questions about understanding the environment, the universe, and it developed into a very, very sophisticated science of life, including the human being. If you interpret the yoga philosophy in a practical way, which is what we do, you develop an enormous insight into how you function. Psychologically, emotionally. But why would you want to know all that? That is where the yoga comes in. Control. Because if you look at the modern human being, we have all the conveniences of technology. A washing machine, a car, or a train, or a plane, or a bus. We don't have to perform physical labor anymore. And yet, one of the most often heard complaints is, I'm so tired. Why? There's no physical labor anymore. Almost everything we need to do is done by machines. Why are we so tired? What is it that makes us lose all that energy, causing us to be so tired? It's mental activity, which is most part subconscious, and therefore we have no control over it. And that is where yoga comes in. That is where the yoga comes in. I wrote this without looking at it, so it's a new language. Look. No. My subconscious is taking me places where I don't want to be. What does this look like?
House?
Yes, it's a house. It's not just a house, it's a house in a very cold place. It's in Siberia. This is an explanation of how a human being functions. It's a house in Siberia. So because it's so cold there, you install a heater. You come home, you turn on the heat, and because it's very cold, you turn the heater to 10. So the boiler starts burning energy, which is then going through the pipes to the elements of the central heating elements. But you know, it's a flimsy house. The walls are not insulated. The roof is not insulated. The windows are single pane windows. So although burning a lot of energy to create heat, a lot of that heat is simply wasted because the house is not insulated. Human beings have a tendency to function like this house that is not insulated. Because subconsciously there is so much activity going on, subconsciously meaning we are not aware of it. We are just living kind of instinctively, based on circumstances that we come across, that we end up in life. And we simply live in a reactive way, spending, or in fact wasting, a lot of energy. Hence, in spite of the fact that we do not have to perform hard labor anymore to survive, many people complain about being tired, and when they go to a doctor, most doctors have no answer, and often even give medicine that they should not be giving. That's another story. What we need to do is to insulate the house. We need to start putting insulation in between the walls and the roof, and put in 2 or 3 layered window panes. Insulate, so that when you come home and you turn the dial of the heater to 3, the house warms up, the heat stays inside, and you save a lot of energy. That is where the yoke comes in. Energy why? You know, when we talk about control, which the word yoke implies, people think, control? Yoga is not about control. Yoga is about liberation, being free. But you cannot liberate yourself. You cannot be free if you continue to waste lots of energy and have life determined based on circumstances. You're not in control. So control should not be confused with oppression. And to understand that, look at it from this point of view. I have 2 more examples, metaphors. A laser beam. Do you understand what a laser beam is? It's pure energy, right? But energy, when it is not canalized, is ineffective. And look what a laser beam can do. It can slice through reinforced concrete. A laser beam can slice through steel. It's only energy. It's not a saw. It's not a drill. It's energy. But it's being concentrated to such high extent, canalized, that it goes through concrete and steel. Another example is a nuclear power plant. Nuclear power plant makes energy out of atoms. Almost nothing. And yet, if you look at a nuclear power plant, it costs billions of dollars to build. It takes many years to construct because it's very, very complex. Why? Because nuclear energy is very effective if it is controlled through all the steps of the process. That is why the nuclear power plant is so complex and so extensive, expansive, and expensive to build. But if there is no control, the whole thing explodes. Huge destruction occurs. But because we put into place this enormous complex machinery that controls the nuclear process, the atomic reactions, it heats and lights millions of homes. Why am I telling you these metaphors? A human being is like that. If we canalize our energy, it starts working wonders for us. It starts working miracles for us. But if we fail to control our energy, it can turn destructive. There is an irony here, because people with large amounts of energy can become very self-destructive. They can create like no other people can because of that energy. But if that energy is not canalized, not controlled, they pay a very high price for that creativity. Examples? Artists. Real artists. Real artists are artists because they have more energy than average human beings. And it leads to their ability to create beautiful, touching music, or paintings, or sculptures, or any kind of. But what is the characteristic of most artistic people? Instability. Emotional instability. Which leads to substance abuse, which is their way of coping with the instability. It leads to very tragic and dramatic relationships. And it very often leads to premature death. Examples: Van Gogh. If you read the history of Van Gogh, it's one big tragedy. If Amy Winehouse, more recent example, such a wonderful artist and such a tragic end. And a more recent example is, of course, Britney Spears. Those people are not created by commerce. They are truly artists. They became big, but their energy started to work against them. That is where the yoke comes in. Because an example of an artist that had his energy under control and lived a very long, prosperous life is Picasso, for example, who lived into his 90s. Or Yehudi Menuhin. Have you ever heard of Yehudi Menuhin? Violin player, who wrote a foreword in B.K.S. Iyengar's yoga book. Lived into his 90s. Brilliant artist who had their most precious capital, which is energy, under control. But most artists, because they lack the control tool, they make wonderful creations, but on the other side they suffer tremendously, leading to premature death either because of substance abuse, unhealthy lifestyle, or suicide. You see what this is about? It's all about energy. you are all, and me included, a ball of energy. And the better you can canalize and control that, the more you will manifest into this world. I even dare say it will allow you to start taking care of your destiny. That sounds very mysterious, and we think with all the education that we had and our intellectual development that I'm the boss, I'm in charge, and nobody's going to tell me anything. That's not true. On a certain level, we are, of course, the boss over ourselves and our lives, but only on a small scale. For a large part, our lives, and our destinies included, is determined by circumstances. That can be weather, bloody hot outside. I'm from the Netherlands, I was not born for this kind of heat, so I need an air conditioner. But circumstances, war or peace, have a huge influence on what happens next in our life. Personal relationships, professional relationships, all are subject to events happening that force our life, our destiny in a certain direction that we are not in charge of, that we are not choosing. And that is where yoga comes in. That is the true essence of yoga, and that is what liberation is about. Liberation is not having a halo around your head and dressing up like a Jesus Christ or a Buddha and going through life like that. A very practical way in daily life, it means you are more above average conscious of what is manipulating you, and because of that consciousness, it gives you more control. It gives you a position to be more in charge of yourself. And instead of being subjected to circumstances, you create circumstances. So yoga is promising all kinds of those new agey things, you know, happiness, health, etc. And nobody can actually really explain how it works. Well, you know, it sounds nice, flower power and what have you. But happiness and health are things that need to be earned. You think you are free so you can drink a bottle of soju every day and eat whatever you want at McDonald's and Kentucky Fried Chicken. I'm not judging, but that is not freedom. Because those kind of foods and drinks, you may enjoy them, but they completely destroy your most precious capital, your energy. Everybody knows that, if you give it some thought. So freedom is not... freedom is the contrary of what most people think freedom entails, that you can just do whatever you like. You can look at it from a child's perspective. If you tell your child, we are modern parents, you are free to do whatever you want. Sounds very lofty, admirable, but the child will only eat pizza and hamburgers. And it will only watch TV and play computer games. Because a child doesn't have any control to it at all, has no insight at all what's good and what's bad for him or her. As an adult, well, it's the question, do we? So, many adults, of course, have evolved to a point where we are capable of making sensible decisions. But not always. We do not always have the insights or the control. That is where we become addicted to something. That is, we know that it's not good, but we cannot resist. Everything is energy. Now, when you do a yoga course that is a little bit more than just exercising. A big part of the curriculum of all those yoga courses is physical anatomy. Anybody who has done such a course? A physical anatomy is about 70% of the curriculum. And you have to memorize the muscles and the joints and the organs and all those kind of things. Not only that, you have to do a test. But show me any original yoga book with a chapter. No, with a paragraph about physical anatomy. They don't exist. You surprised? Why? Why does yoga officially, originally, not have physical anatomy? Because the physical body is a manifestation of energy. If you understand Oriental medicine, Korean people have a very good idea of this. Indian people have a very good idea based on Ayurveda. The foundation of traditional medicine is the same as in yoga. Everything is energy. If the energy is good, the condition is good. If the energy is bad, obstructed, poor, then the condition is poor. Which means if we get sick, the cause of the disease is always energy. Then Ayurveda and Korean traditional medicine focuses on restoring the health of the energy circulation. If the doctor, of course, does it correctly. They don't focus on the symptoms, they focus on the cause. And the cause always found in energy. Yoga is the same. And that is why yoga doesn't have physical anatomy. If you practice yoga correctly, your energy household is good, is optimal. And you will be healthier and happier as a result. And if you had existing conditions when you started practicing yoga, you notice that they slowly but certainly heal. That is the true healing aspect of yoga is that you really start healing. Not overnight. It is a process. Just as the process to become sick, which you didn't notice, which you were not aware of, it just crept in, took a long time to get there. So it takes quite some time to get out of it, but you heal. And once you are at a good level of health, you maintain that health. Compared to average human beings, you will be healthier, happier, more youthful. Everything is energy. So I'm talking about energy, not about muscles and joints and organs. And before we actually started, we had a little conversation, and I said that yoga, the essence of yoga is so effective and also at the same time so simple that people don't believe it. But the thing is, if you go to most yoga studios, 95% or maybe 99% of the yoga classes is modern yoga. Let me tell you something about that also. Because when I was a troubled young guy, a teenager, that was in the late 70s, early 1980s, modern yoga did not exist. The yoga that you now find in all the yoga studios did not exist. The yoga that existed was traditional yoga. It had not lost most of its value yet. At some point, we were playing basketball, a group of unruly teenagers with a huge judo sports guy who took it upon him to keep us busy, to keep us off the street doing naughty things. So we were playing basketball, and at some point he said, "Hey guys, come here," all sweaty and thing. He said, "Sit down." And he said, "Okay, one leg straight, one leg bent, now grab your foot." So what we did, of course, was this. And he said, "No, stop moving. Just grab your foot, stretch up your back, breathe deep, and don't move." And something magical happened. Something that I'd never felt before happened. He made us do various yoga poses, which we had no idea what we were doing. And at some point, one guy said, "Hey, coach, what the hell is this?" Because it was a little bit strange, you know, we were used to move and fool around. And, "Hey, coach, what the hell is this?" That's yoga, my friend. And it felt so good. My battered body started feeling like, wow. So when we were done after the shower, I went to the library. Internet didn't exist yet. I went to the library, I found a book on yoga, simply titled "Teach Yourself Yoga," in the Reader's Digest series of Teach Yourself. Teach yourself Thai cooking, teach yourself yoga, teach yourself gardening. There was a whole series of those books. I found the one on yoga. And that very night I started practicing yoga, and I never stopped. It totally changed my life. And like what I'm telling you is based on my own experience, not something that I read in a book or somebody told me. Everything I teach is based on my own experience. I did take control of my life. I did take control of my destiny. It's why I'm here and not in the Netherlands with a beer belly watching soccer with 3 remote controls. And I come from a big family, 7 kids. 2 of my brothers, with whom I grew up and were just as naughty and unruly as I was until I discovered yoga, they died in their mid-40s. Which means I would have died too if I had not taken control through yoga, if I had not discovered yoga. I'm just saying that yoga really affects how we function. It affects our consciousness, and it awakens characteristics in us, qualities in us, that otherwise remain dormant. How did we get here?
Modern yoga. We were talking about modern yoga.
Yes, modern yoga and tradition. Thank you so much. Your memory is better than mine. Now you can feel maybe that I'm very passionate about yoga. So I just follow a flow. And I do get from one thing into another and not knowing anymore where it came from, but thank you. Kira. How did we get here with modern yoga? In the late 1990s, after I had arrived in Korea, yoga suddenly became popular, influenced by famous people. It started with Madonna, who proudly proclaimed to be a very fanatic yoga practitioner. Sting from the Police, who claimed to do headstands and flying while traveling by airplane in the middle of the aisle, how do you call it, the path, Christy Turlington, very famous model. People came out with their passion for yoga, famous people, influential people. Before that, yoga was rather obscure. Obscure. Such a wonderful science was rather obscure. Why was it obscure? Because people didn't understand exactly what yoga is about. They either thought about hippies, flower power, new age, people in organic food shops, and those kind of things. Or people thought about sects, a little bit creepy, spiritual sects, which exist. But yoga was obscure, it was not really accessible to the masses of people. The people that felt attracted to yoga were people who were already on a path of consciousness. So, something that is obscure is commercially not interesting. It's very difficult to market. How do you market all those things that I'm telling you here? I wish I knew, because I want to put that in my Facebook post. I want to put that on my website. It's very difficult to reflect that. So what did they do? Famous people came out with their passion for yoga. So business people see an opportunity there. How can we streamline yoga so that we can make money off of it, so that we can commercialize it? It must be accessible to the masses of the people. To do so, you must get rid of everything that people might think difficult or creepy or unrealistic. So basically what they did, they stripped yoga of all its valuable aspects and they only kept the physical exercise. Pour over a little sauce of mysteriousness and present it as yoga. You build a studio with nice pictures on the wall with Shiva and what have you, and you burn some incense and you play new age music. Boom, people start coming into your studio and they all want to pay the membership fee. Become a member, you recognize that? But because of the commercialization, yoga lost its true value. I'm not saying that this is a bad thing, because everything is a process. What the commercialization of yoga did is it has opened up real yoga to more people. But the way that they get there is through the fake yoga, through the commercial yoga. People start yoga out of an interest, and then the questions come. And people read books, internet, talk with friends. They hear things that intrigue them. But I don't find it in my yoga studio. Where can I find? Where can I get some more insight? Where can I practice a little deeper, more serious yoga? And that is how people who otherwise never would have entered into yoga, they eventually find their way zigzagging, and they find magic wand yoga. They come to a place where they get what they need to satisfy their hunger for deeper insight, for more. That brings me to, how does it all work? Traditional yoga and modern yoga are totally opposite of each other. And I will explain why. Because everything is energy, right? Now, a human being has dormant characteristics that remain dormant as long as the energy is not controlled. That is why we need to control energy. Now, how does it work? First, let's start with this. Everybody knows this. Yin and Yang. It's not yoga, it's Chinese. But everybody knows Yin and Yang, right? Many people think that, oh, nice, that is a mysterious symbol, spiritual. We have earrings with Yin and Yang, we have necklaces with Yin and Yang. It looks interesting, but you know, ancient people didn't have the luxury for decoration. We think it's nice picture, it's decoration, but it's not. It's a symbol for how energy works, and with that, how a human being functions. So what is this about? This is energy in balance, energy in harmony. Energy exists out of two opposites, a plus and a minus. And we have many ways to reflect that plus and minus. Plus, minus. Heaven, earth. Feminine, masculine. Dark and light. They are opposites. But if you look carefully at this model, what do you notice? It's not just dark and light, is it? Or is it? The dark side has part of the light in it. The eye is not an eye. It looks like it. It looks like a decoration that is just there by coincidence. No, it has a very profound meaning, very deep meaning. The light side has part of the dark. What does this mean? It reflects harmony, balance. I look like a man, right? So, yang energy is masculine, symbolically. So am I just yang energy then? And you look like a lady. So you're only just yin energy then? The reality is, if it is correct, that I have both masculine and feminine energy. And with that, I have both masculine and feminine characteristics, if I am relatively balanced. Now, because of ego, many men especially, they are scared of their feminine characteristics, so they will deny it, leading to an imbalance. But something very interesting happened to me in the past that I didn't understand at that time, which I now understand based on this. I used to get attention from homosexual men because they had a feeling that I'm homosexual. And I always had to say, no. I like you, I like talking with you, but I don't want to go any further than that. Because I'm not attracted to men. So please respect that. But why me? Because I have feminine characteristics that I don't oppress. That's not only because of yoga. I grew up in a big family with a mom and 3 sisters. Although that is not entirely the explanation, I think, because my other 3 brothers, they were not like that. In the past, I always thought I'm the black sheep of the family, and I suffered because of that. Later, I realized I was the white sheep, because I started to realize the positive side of being different. In Sanskrit, we don't call it yin and yang. Shiva and Shakti. Is that correct? Shiva is the feminine energy. Shakti is the masculine energy. Is that correct?
No, opposite.
Yes, that's what many people will say. But look, the dark side has a white spot. The white side has a dark spot. Why? Kiran obviously knows something about Shiva and Shakti. You know, Shiva is a male god. Male. Shakti is a female god. Many yoga teachers will indeed tell you that yin energy, the feminine energy, is Shakti because Shakti is a female goddess. While the yang energy is Shiva energy because Shiva is a male god. I tell you the opposite. And the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, the Bible of yoga, confirms that what I'm telling you is correct. When we're in the course, I can show you in chapter 3 and 4 the sutras that talk about Shakti fire, the Shakti Kundalini, Kundalini Shakti. I will explain in all detail. But what is this about? And where is the confusion coming from? If you are properly initiated into yoga, you are being taught that although Shiva is a male god, he represents, like the white spot on the dark side, he represents feminine energy. And vice versa, Shakti, although female, represents the masculine energy. And the anecdote is, the story goes, that when Shakti wants attention from her Lord Shiva, she starts to move. Movement is masculine energy. See, there is an incredible depth in these philosophies that most people, including yoga teachers, don't know. And when you look at the surface, it is logical that you say, well, Shakti is a male god, so, or a female god, so that must be the feminine, that must be the yin energy, and vice versa. The yoga is full of these kind of secrets that will determine whether you really understand yoga or not. And once you understand it, I challenge you to start talking with your other yoga teachers and just see what they will say about it. I promise you that only today's workshop, you will not only know but understand more about yoga than most certified yoga teachers do. Now, what is this all about? It's energy. We have talked about control. We have talked about conditions. But energy is subject to the movement of the universe, day and night. As human beings, we go to sleep, and Shiva energy dominates. Responsible for healing, for recovery, for resting. When the sun comes up, we awaken. Not only we awaken, nature awakens. The birds fly out of their nest, start looking for food. The flowers, when they are blooming, open up to catch the sun Shakti energy starts to dominate. And throughout the day, that energy goes up and down. Often we compensate with a nice cup of coffee when we're here, but we're going up and down. The thing is, like with nuclear energy, it becomes really powerful when it stops fluctuating so much. To understand that, war and peace, a country that is at war, in war, is not productive, is deteriorating, is going down the drain. A country that is stable without conflict starts to flourish. Example, South Korea, which was the poorest country in the world 70 years ago, one of the poorest countries in the world. Now it's among one of the richest countries in the world. Why? Stability. Europe. You know why they created Europe? Europe, they have been fighting wars. Everybody was fighting everybody for thousands of years. Needless, useless bloodshed. And the weapons became more and more violent, and at some point they said, if we continue like this, it leads to self-destruction. Let's control our egos. Let's stop these foolish, stupid wars, destructive wars. Look at Europe. It's one of the most prosperous continents in the world. That is what harmony does, because peace is harmony. No? A human being is exactly like that. Are there teachers in the room? People who teach children? Yeah? Or you have children? What is the most important for children? To flourish, to develop physically, mentally, and emotionally. To develop a good functioning intellect. What is the most important for children? Stability. Stability is harmony, is peace. Stability, safety, security. This is what happens. Maybe if you don't have children or you're not a teacher, you will remember when you were young and you were in school that there are children in your class who they do very well. They're on the top. Every semester when the report comes out, they have the highest scores. They're the teacher's favorite. Their pride. There are also children, they perform very, very poor. Not only do they perform very poor intellectually, very low grades at the end of the semester, sometimes they have to repeat, double the class, do it again because their grades were so poor. They are rebellious. They fight with other kids. They rebel against the teacher, are not cooperative, and so on. And then we say, these kids are bad kids. Those are good kids. These are bad kids. Are they? No. They're just a victim of the circumstances. These children come from a home where there is no routine. There is no loving, caring parents. Those children wake up in the morning and they don't even know if they're going to get a breakfast before going to school. They don't even know when they come home whether their parents are actually there. Whether they have to take care of their own lunch or a cup of tea after in the afternoon. Or those children are very unstable. They don't know whether their parents are fighting with each other when they open the front door coming home, or whether there's peace. So these children are very, very distracted, very, very busy. If only you give them routine, security, stability, they will start to thrive. That's how it works. It explains how it's so long ago I can now honestly talk about it. That is explaining how I have avoided the fate of my two brothers that died prematurely. I was distracted, scattered, because of instability, insecurity, lack of routine. But yoga gave me all that, and I started to thrive in my way. That is what harmony does. And harmony in Sanskrit is sattva. You know the mantra Om? Om. That's a vibration of harmony. In the church they say Amen. Amen comes from the word Om. Muslims say Ameen. They put their hand on their heart, Ameen. Deeply rooted in our cultures, all cultures around the world, you find this emphasis on harmony, on peace. We have just lost the meaning of it, most of us. It's just become an empty concept, a superficial concept. But it is crucial for life to flourish. What you do with practicing yoga correctly, and we're still talking about the difference between modern yoga and traditional yoga. With modern yoga, you're moving. The teacher plays new age music to flower up the class, make it sound spiritual. The teacher constantly talks about muscles, constantly talking, right? Yes. Are you a yoga teacher? The teacher constantly talks, even during the meditation. And when you do the yoga asanas, you're constantly moving. Now, all these three elements are totally in total contradiction with yoga. Music distracts. The teacher talking about all these physical aspects distracts. The movement keeps this harmony going, this fluctuation between tamas and rajas. If you go to a yoga class, and the yoga class is like any other exercise class, you feel good when you're done, when the class is finished, but you are tired. Of course it's satisfying. Exercise is always good for everybody. It's good for health. That's not the point. I'm not saying it's not good. It's good. But when you practice yoga correctly, after the class, you feel energized and refreshed. The opposite of tired and exhausted. And that is why I say it's totally the opposite. And the reason why is, we don't play music. When the basic explanations have been made, the teacher shuts up. And very important, we don't move. is that possible? How can you do a yoga asana without moving? Well, of course, you have to initiate. But you know the word for yoga exercise is asana, right? Or, do you know what it means?
Pose?
Yeah.
Movement?
Yes, but what kind of pose? It literally means standing still. As long as you move, you have the fluctuation between tamas and rajas, between acceleration and rest, activity and rest. No harmony. Asana, look, I will show you asana. Am I resting in the pose? Relaxing in the pose? No, I am very actively engaging. But I'm not moving. That is weird. This is the secret of yoga. And it's so simple. What am I doing? You know that when you move, Shakti energy is generated. So you keep that in disharmony going. You perpetuate the disharmony by moving. Flow yoga, power yoga, Ashtanga yoga, all the dynamic yogas, hot yoga, Bikram yoga. It's good for health. It's a good exercise, but it's not yoga. There is no yoke, there is no control element. Constantly creating Shakti, which inevitably means you have to recover from the fatigue after the class. And so you just keep going. What I just did, I combined both by not moving but actively engaging. Many teachers say when you do asana, relax in the pose. Is that correct?
Yes.
No.
They say that is good.
Yes, they say. But is it correct to say that? No. You must always engage actively. But it is correct that you must not move. They conflate things, they confuse things. Because when you relax, you end up like this. But this is Tadasana. I'm standing straight. It looks like nothing, but from the heels all the way to the top of my head, I'm actively engaging. Not like this. Like this. There is a balance. And that is where the fluctuations between these two conditions, let me use another color. The fluctuations become smaller. So there is more and more harmony in our energy household. So after the class you're not exhausted. Is this just a spiritual aspect and it sounds all very nice? No, this has very deep implications into how we function. Like a country that is at war, there is chaos. There is destruction instead of building up. Like a child that is unstable, the child is not functioning and not developing into a balanced, emotionally mature adult. that is what yoga does. When you do it correctly, yoga doesn't have physical anatomy, but it does have anatomy. We call this subtle anatomy. What are you looking at here? The 7 chakras. I'm always trying to teach the whole course in just a short workshop. This is, if you understand, many people think chakras, oh, chakras sounds very spiritual. It explains how we function. Do you have chakras inside your body? Well, if you go to the hospital and you ask the surgeon to take out your Manipura chakra, cut open your body, take out the Manipura chakra, he can't find anything. Chakra is energy. And with modern technology, you can actually make it visible. Because energy can be made visible with color. You see a field, a ball of energy, which ancient people without the modern technology knew intuitively. This explains how we function. And to understand, first of all, paradise. Paradise is a condition of harmony. We fell from paradise when the harmony was disturbed. Of course, we say Adam and Eve were naughty behind the tree and then they went to hell. I'm simplifying the story a little bit. But it has a very deep meaning also. You know the story of the universe? First there was nothing. Then there was the Big Bang. The Big Bang started with energy exploding. That energy condensed. You understand the word condensation? Became more and more dense, thicker. The energy becomes gas. The universe is full of gas. Gas, when it continues to condense, becomes liquid. Liquid, when it continues to condense, becomes solid matter. The fall from paradise is this process from energy into physical flesh and bones. Your physical body is the end product of that downfall. But you are still a ball of energy. But a ball of energy that has a tendency to condense towards the bottom. Why is this important? Because it explains how we function instinctively and psychologically. The child, the unstable child in your class, because there is no harmony, that energy condenses more and more towards the bottom, and the child is functioning based on the lower 3 chakras. Fear, desire, ego are dominating that child's life. The heart, that is where there is compassion, where there is unconditional love. Is not functioning in a child like that. That is why he's so rebellious, fighting with other kids, rebelling against the teacher, uncooperative. There is no heart. The throat is expression. For artists, that is a very important energy center. But here, we have the intellect. The intellect. The reason why this unstable child is not functioning, has very low grades, is because all the energy is below the diaphragm. He is functioning like an animal to survive. No stability, no direction. As adults, we must create circumstances for the child. As a government, the government has in fact a duty to create those circumstances for you and me in society. You understand that? Here you see why that is so important. Now, when energy becomes harmonious, the condition of paradise comes back again. It sounds weird, but the condition of paradise is not a fairy tale from an ancient book. All ancient books have this condition, by the way, not just Christianity, but all philosophies, all religions, all spiritual streams, all know the concept of paradise. Paradise, that is the seventh chakra. The sixth chakra is intellect. Yoga does indeed promise higher IQ after a period of regular practice. It's true, I did an IQ test and proved that my IQ had in fact increased. It does. But it is the crown chakra where our most important, most wonderful characteristics are located. The crown chakra is the home of intuition, insight, wisdom, unconditional love, which manifests from the crown chakra through the heart. When energy becomes harmonious, the process of condensation stops. And when you do something sophisticated as yoga, you reinforce the process by bringing energy up. It's called the Kundalini effect. This energy does not rise up without control. This energy does not rise up as long as you keep moving and play music while you're supposed to concentrate and focus. And the teacher keeps distracting you with all unnecessary details about the alignment and the bones and the muscles and the joints and what have you. This is why they call this Raja Yoga. Raja is a king. A king, a real king, in the past was trained in line with this to awaken those qualities in the crown chakra so that they become fair and just rulers. Not evil conquerors, but people who were able to judge fairly, regardless of whether you were a beggar or a rich merchant. Let me just give you a very simple example how you can see the difference, because it's just right in front of us here. In the past 4 years, have you witnessed the chaos, the conflict that occurred not only in the United States but around the world? And have you noticed how it changed in the past 7 months? You know what I'm talking about, right? I'm talking about a person in charge whose energy is all below the diaphragm. And all he can think of is selfish interest. And whether people around him drop dead, lose money, get sick, he doesn't care. Because he has no heart, and he has no royal qualities. See? The person that is in charge now is opposite. You may not like him, that's not the point. Just objectively comparing the two, you can very clearly see what yoga is designed to do. It makes you a natural leader, and of course it starts with leading yourself first. In the long term it may end up that you become a director of some sort, a manager of some sort, in a natural way, and one with a heart. So we gave an example of two world leaders who were totally opposites. But you are all adults. You have met people in your own family, but maybe more importantly in your profession. You can very clearly see the difference there too. Maybe you have worked in a company where people were always walking on their toes, scared of the manager or the boss, and always looking at the clock, hoping that it would be time to go home again. Those kind of companies with leaders like that is the same. There is no heart. There is no royal characteristics. So there is constant conflict. And nobody is happy. Which also translates into lower productivity, big turnover of personnel. People don't stay long, so they develop some skills and then they leave the company and new people have to be trained all over again. So a huge amount of money and energy and effort is going to waste because of that disharmony. But maybe you have experience also working in a company with a boss with heart, with a manager with heart, who cared about you and your well-being and the work that you do, who cared about the person cleaning the toilets as well as the people in the upper managerial levels. And the company is profitable, and the people will even work there after 30 years, they're still working there, building huge qualities, insights and skills, which make the company more profitable. Here you can see how it works. Can you understand this a little bit? Can you apply that a little bit to how you function yourself? Because that's what yoga really is about. And taking control of it. Chakras are real. They are fields of energy. You know that the brain is like a mainframe computer. So the brain is responsible for the functioning of everything that is below. All the body parts, the glands, everything, the organs, the muscles and what have you. The brain, as a mainframe computer, gives pulses, signals to everything that is below, through the nerves. The nerves are like internet cables. So from the mainframe comes a big bundle of cables, internet cable, from the brain going down. At the level of the throat, a small bundle of cables comes out, separate from the main cable, to take care of functions at the level of the throat. Speaking, swallowing, but also hearing is a function of the throat chakra. So the rest of the cable continues to go down, and at the level of the heart, from the spine, a small bundle of nerves comes out, a small sub-internet cable comes out to service the heart and the lungs. At that point where the sub-cable comes out of the spine, there is a field of energy. And that field of energy we have called chakras. The ancient people have called that chakras. Ancient people intuitively had a much more sophisticated insight into how we functioned than we have today, but based purely on intuition. In the same way that ancient people, without the sophisticated machinery and tools that we have today, technology, they had a pretty good idea about the universe, the movement of the stars, how that movement of the stars even affected life on Earth. They even had insight into atomic structure, which is invisible to the naked eye. Ancient people did science not by books, but intuitively, through sheer contemplation. See the connection here with yoga? You become a natural scientist yourself. When you practice yoga, you become inquisitive. You become curious about things that you never thought about before, naturally. And it always starts with the self. You start first asking yourself, who am I? Like the ancient people did at the origin of yoga. Who am I? Why am I here? What is the purpose of me being here? Where am I going? Where do I want to go? Etc. And when you satisfy those basic needs for questions, for answers, you expand your field of science. And you start looking at the stars, at the sky, the sun and the moon, and nature, the animals and the plants and what have you. I've seen people who worked as lawyers, architects, doctors. You know, these are kind of jobs that have prestige. And many people are in these jobs because of the prestige, the money they can make, the status that it gives them. So the work that they do is just to stay alive, just to keep going. But I have seen those people who started yoga with me in Amsterdam with Ajita. I have seen them transform. And the architect that first just developed buildings just to establish his name more, the bigger, the fancier, the better, started building green buildings. Buildings that increased productivity of the people working in those buildings because they included internal gardens, because specific use of they started looking at the building from the perspective of the human being, not from ego or status or prestige. Environmentally friendly buildings they started to develop. The doctor who first wanted to just have as many patients as possible to fill up his bank account suddenly started to care about his patients and became a doctor that really stand out. Where people want to go from far away, they come to visit this doctor because they heard about how humane he is, how special he is compared to other doctors. Lawyers that first, like the architect, just cared about the status and the money, who start to care about actual people, who started to see criminals actually as human beings that were disadvantaged because they understood how this all works. And they understood their responsibility in helping them to heal. That is what yoga does with you. We call this a yoga teacher training course. That is the closest we can get. The 95% of the people that come to our class does not ever teach yoga. People come here to learn, to grow, to develop, to transform. And whatever it is that you do currently as a job, you may choose to change your profession just because it feels right. I did. Before I came to Korea, before yoga, I had different kinds of professions, but nothing that really filled my heart. Nothing that really, it was just a means to get where I wanted to be with yoga. But whatever it is that you do currently, like the doctor, the architect, you will start putting heart into it. And that will make you stand out. That will make you special. Restaurant. Do you go to restaurants sometimes to eat? If there are people in a restaurant that just like the doctor and the architect and the lawyer are just working for the money, you feel that. Maybe subconsciously, but you feel that. When you enter the door, you already feel, well, maybe they say hello, but you don't really feel their heart. They're not really warm and welcoming. They quickly move you to your table, put a menu on your table, and they're impatiently waiting for you to give their order. Then the food comes, and it fills your stomach, but it's not anything special. It's not bad, but it's not good either. It's a place where you probably will not go back. And you will not tell your friends about it, to go there also. But then there is the restaurant where, with an owner with heart. Can be a yogi, but it doesn't have to be. There are many people with heart who've never been in a yoga studio. But that person takes care of the people working there, makes them appreciated, feel valuable. The cook, the chef in the kitchen, the people serving, undergoing the abuse from the customers, but the owner has a heart, takes care of them. When you enter the front door of the restaurant, you feel that heart. The people smile at you. They are patient. They even give you some advice about the nice foods of the day. And when you eat the food, you taste the heart in that food. It's made with passion. Maybe it's a little bit more expensive than the other restaurant, but you will come back. Not only that, you will tell your friends about it, and they will come too. You know what? Any serious book on yoga tells you, and it may seem a total contradiction with what spirituality is about, but any book on yoga, serious book on yoga, tells you that yoga leads to wealth. Not only spiritually, also materially. And this is why. Whatever it is that you do, you stand out and people want to pay for your services. Gladly. It's subconscious, but it's very powerful. That is what the transformation does with us. And it's all energy. We come back to the same concept again and again. It's all about energy. Energy is most effective when it is harmonious. The universe, nature, causes energy to fluctuate. We canalize that energy, and yoga does that. And it starts with a stupid, simple thing like the tree pose, where you're not moving, but standing still while actively reaching for the sky. That is where the harmony starts. Have you experienced a traditional yoga class? We're going to do some today. After every asana, you come out of the pose and you stand still for a moment, or you sit or you lie still for a moment. You close your eyes, you take a deep breath, and shionen. Korean people use the word shionen. There is no proper English word to translate that, but you feel that energy spreading. It just gives relief, it gives light, it feels so nice, it is addictive. That only happens when you practice asana correctly. Do you have any questions? Does it sound a bit realistic? Can you grasp how this applies to us personally? You know, yoga, traditional yoga, is full of mystery and dogma. You know that? Yoga is not mysterious and dogmatic. Where does the mystery and dogma come from? It's a lack of understanding. If you understand yoga, you see what you have in front of you is very practical. That's the way that I teach also. Very practical. And it is a very powerful systematic system that truly leads to transformation. It leads in a very short time, starting from the very first lesson, to awakening of consciousness you never possessed before. And it is something that you cannot get from a book. The Hatha Yoga Pradipika in chapter 1 already says, just reading the holy books doesn't make you a yogi. You must practice. Just wearing the clothes of a yogi doesn't make you a yogi. You must practice. But you must do it correctly. Only then it works. You know, there are yoga teachers, many yoga teachers in fact do this. They put you in the warrior pose. And while you are standing there shaking and sweating, they walk around. Connect your body with your mind and your soul. You recognize that? Most yoga teachers do that. Next time, be rebellious and ask, teacher, how do I do that? How do I connect my body and my mind and my soul? They will hate you for asking that question because they don't know. But it does impress people. It does sound impressive when a teacher with a mysterious voice tells you to connect your body with your mind and your soul. Who wouldn't want to connect the body and the mind and the soul? We all want. How does it work? Again, I'm going to tell you. It's much simpler than you think. But all the mystery and dogma exist because people just don't know. The body and the mind and the soul. It's about energy. The physical body is those 5 chakras. Sukshma Sharira. This is constituting the physical body. The body, the mind, and the soul. The soul is the crown chakra, where all those wonderful royal characteristics are located. This implies that the body, the mind, and the soul are not connected. Right? In the media, there is very often the mention of disconnect, the disconnect in society, and what have you. And teachers say, connect the body with the mind and the soul. Yoga does that. Truly. And I will explain why shortly. But it doesn't do that as long as the teacher keeps talking, which doesn't allow you from turning your attention inwards. Yoga is an internal practice, not an external practice. Hence, no music, no talking, no movement. Internal. Standing still, in silence, forces your attention inwards. we are always active physically. But while physically active, we are busy on our mobile phone, reading the news, the weather report, texting, etc. If you do that while you drive, bang, you bump into a tree, or another car, or worse. That is disconnect. As long as you keep moving, you can do that actually while doing different activities with your mind that are not related to your movement. Correct? What do you think will happen if I'm in this pose and I check my text message on my mobile phone, or I watch TV, or listen to music? I will lose my balance. Why? To stand still requires concentration. So I'm not only activating my physical body in a very measured way, leading to balance, to harmony, but I'm forced to do that with mental activity, concentration. There you have it. You align the physical body with the mental body by concentrating on the thing that you do with that physical body. It's that simple. Now, this will be the last thing. It's time for a short break. I'm going to give you a metaphoric symbol of a human being in 3 conditions. Physical body, mental body, spiritual body. Point of gravity in this human being is purely physical. This is a condition many people are in these days. We are mentally top heavy because of study, because of work. Most work these days is behind the desk doing mental activities. But this is the condition where we are top heavy. And naturally, the physical body in those people does deteriorate. Many people these days are in that condition where the physical, at too young age, already their physical condition is poor. This is a condition of people who are struggling to survive. They are physically very busy, active, surviving, labor, overwork, no room for mental activity. This is a kind of a luxury position. But in both cases, you see no activity in the spiritual body. The crown chakra, the location of all those wonderful characteristics. What you do with yoga is the following. You're physically active. But in a controlled and measured way. So you preserve harmony. To practice yoga correctly, in a controlled, measured way, you must work mentally. Connect the body with the mind. When the body and the mind are in relative harmony, magic happens. Magic. There is a reason why we chose that name. The spiritual body becomes activated. Naturally. And you already know spiritual body, although it sounds like a luxury to go to a yoga class and practice yoga and meditate and do. Is it a luxury? No, it's a huge implication on mankind. The well-being of mankind depends on this. Now you have connect the body with the mind and the soul. But as soon as there is a disturbance of the harmony, the fall from paradise, this is the paradise. This harmony between the body and the mind leads to a dysfunctioning of the crown chakra. The spiritual body, the body that we call in our ancient books paradise, heaven. There is a reason why we call it seventh heaven. It is the seventh chakra from the bottom. Ancient people knew all this. Modern people have all forgotten this. It is so wonderful. Spirituality sounds like a luxury, but it brings out qualities, characteristics in people that avoid conflict, that avoid war, that lead the people around you start to benefit from your crown chakra functioning. I talked a little bit, before we actually started, I explained that I adopted 2 dogs. While I was very determined never ever to have a dog anymore. But the dog showed up in the park. We looked each other in the eyes. I just keep it very short. And it became a holy duty for me to rescue that dog. It gave me sleepless nights to know that it was below 15 degrees Celsius at that time in January. But that dog didn't allow anybody to approach. He ate, he drank the food that we gave him. It didn't allow to be put on a leash, to be touched. Wild dog, born in the park, ran away after adoption, only 4 days into the adoption. After 3 months, we started crossing the road into the apartment area. Busy road, so it became really dangerous. The fire brigade came, the police came, the park authorities, Riverside Park Authority. Everybody was hunting the dog. And I thought, if I don't hurry up, something bad is going to happen to this poor thing. So I borrowed a cage and I trapped him in that cage with very delicious food. After 3 months. While that dog settled down, I then found out that he had a sister that was still in the shelter. For 6 months after I discovered the first dog, 3 months later I rescued him from the park. Another 3 months later, I adopted his sister too. Crazy. People told me, you're crazy. Because at that time, I had no income. I quit. I wanted to take a break for a year. I'm single, in a foreign country. People said, you're in no position to take a dog. It's a commitment for the next 15 years. What? You're going to take another dog? 2 dogs? Crazy. But I followed my heart. I connected the dots. They are so happy and healthy now. I showed a video. In the course, I will talk about these 2 dogs because it's a full-time job. And people thought it would mess up my life, but it inspired me after a year to start teaching again. And more inspired than before, more passionate than before. It's the universe that brought these 2 creatures onto my path and appealed to my duty to help them. And every morning around 4 o'clock I wake up with a purpose. Get up and take them to the park. Come home, exercise, sleep a little more. 9:30 we go to the park again. And our last walk in the evening. It's a full-time job. But I can. And I'm happy. I cannot imagine what my life would be right now. 2.5 years after I found them and adopted them. I would have been alone, just teaching yoga. For what? That brings me to the point that life is not about what you want. Not anymore. Life is about following your heart and doing what you have to do. That's holy duty. And that is how I did something in total contradiction with what people thought would be good for me. They thought, you're crazy to take these dogs. What I'm trying to tell here is that, the yoga books tell you that the yogi develops the ability to create and destroy. I create. Not only the dogs are happy and healthy and stable, and, by the way, the dog community in the park, they are bragging about my dogs. When other people come for the first time, they think, oh, they're so scary, because they look like a fox and a wolf. They do look like a fox and a wolf. But people say, among all the dogs here, those 2, they are the sweetest. They are the most well-behaved. They really are. Other dogs, often they fight. When another dog is aggressive, the other dog will react. My dogs, they walk away. When a dog becomes nasty, they just avoid them. They never fight. That's the power of yoga. They became harmonious because I am relatively harmonious. It will radiate out to your neighbors without them even realizing it. If you're in a situation where you live with family, your family members all benefit from your harmony. Your plants will flourish, believe it or not. Not only you flourish, everything around you starts flourishing. You don't believe it, but it's amazing. That's the magic of yoga. Like it or not, you will be part of that. Questions? My throat is becoming a little bit hoarse, so I think I talked more than enough. I see some sleepy eyes here and there. Let's have a short break. Then we will do some asana in a correct way. then we're done. Hopefully it will be a little bit cooler outside then. Okay?